Hello, everyone. Welcome to Bootcamp. In today's session, we'll be covering Bit. Daniyal will be leading it today. And then once that's completed, then we'll look at some design systems for developers. And if we have time left over, then Zeeshan will continue with how to use Bit and Storybook together.
Okay, Daniel, you please take over.
Yes, hello everyone.
Mhm.
Today we will cover bit dev. So what is bit? Today we will understand. Just let me share my screen first. Yes, can you see my screen?
Not yet. Yes, now.
Perfect.
Yes.
So
Now.
today the target is component driven development. What is this? Adil bhai in the last class have briefly explained, and also Sir Zeeshan explained the storybook for this component driven development. Today we will cover bit. So basically, what is bit? First of all, I share the documentation, and then we start the bit. Yes. Basically, if you want to share your component, not the whole project, so how you can maintain your component and how you can manage your component with your team. So bit is the platform where you can share the component, and all the team members can share the component. But same thing if you consider the git. So what github and git is providing us, if we need to maintain the code, if we need to maintain the project code, so we push the code to github. Same thing if we want to maintain the component, not the whole project, whole repository, so how we can maintain the component. So bit is the platform that is giving us the service. Here we can maintain our components, and here we can uh, create multiple versions of our component. Let's suppose I have a let's think like that. I have a product list, and I'm thinking this product list I have built, and this product list can use in multiple projects. Right now in one project I built it, and I'm thinking this product list is very I built very well, so I can use this product list in multiple projects. So what I can do, I can export my component here on bit and import it in all other projects. I don't need the whole project to push like on GitHub and import the whole project. I just export the component. And another thing, if a product list I have built and push it here on bit, but let's suppose the product list is a have multiple versions. Let's suppose one product list I created, I built very simple. Another one with animations, another one with some bootstrap and with material UI. So what I can do, I can create multiple versions of that component, and the whole and the all versions I can put it here on bed. And whenever I need the version, whenever I need the component, let's suppose the simple one or the animation one, or the bootstrap and material UI build component I need, so I can use the bit using the versioning. So how that all works, let's do the practical. So, first of all, we need what you need Node.js version 8.12 plus, a more than a greater version of 8 point from 8.12. Another thing, you can clone the React tutorial, bit React tutorial project from here bit. But what we will do, we will create a project here, cd desktop. uh, right now bit is giving uh, basically we can use a bit with multiple libraries, with React, with Angular, with Vue. So right now we are using with React because we have already learned React. So now I'm going and creating the project bit React. Okay. Here uh, npx create React app and the project name bit React. Okay. Npx create okay. Npx create React app bit React. So basically, if more than one developer is working, a team member is working, how you can manage your components. And for multiple projects, if you need the same component in other project, you don't need to clone whole project code. So you can maintain your components on bit. Once it's done, then I will show you how we can use it. There is some background noise.
No issue. On your wedding day, you are transmitting the class. There is bound to be some background noise.
Oh, this is done. Perfect. Bit React, and here it's done. To do yarn start. So right now, just I build the component, which I will export it. Components. The permission issue I always face because it's Ubuntu, and just giving the permission. Okay, this is not a project specific. This is all my laptop specific security. So I just give the permission. Now I'm going to create a component, nothing else. First of all, I create the folder, and here create the component. Let's create with a nav bar, and here simple export the component. So create the component first, import the analysis is not coming by import. Yes, React from React. Perfect. Now let's create a functional component. Nav bar. And return it. Simple. Let's make it very simple. Nav bar. Okay. Now just export it. Perfect. So this is very simple. What you have already learned, all guys. This is plain React component. So now I have already exported. I just check it. This is all working or not. Slash component. That is not coming. I don't know why. It's loading components. Navbar. nav bar. Just import it and paste it here. Just run. Everything is working perfect. I don't need this logo, that's why the warning was on CLI. It is all working. Local 3000. Never. So the idea is how we can maintain our components. If we have a very beautiful component like a product list, and I want to share the product list component in another project, so how I can do this? I just created a component, very basic component, and now I configure bit in this React project, and then export it on React on bit dev platform, and then import it on another project. So now let's back to the tutorial. Here I have, yes, one most important thing is BitDev account. So BitDev, now I open it on incognito mode. On bit.dev, first of all, you create the account. You sign up first, go on get sign up. Here, just provide the username, email address, and password. And once you create the account, let's I built right now one account. Daniyal Nogori 123, email address daniyalnogori@gmail.com, and password. After that, it will ask about organization. So just provide the organization name here. Create your first component collection. So here, what you can do, you just create the collection of your components. As I have already explained earlier, if you have the multiple version of your component, so here you can create the collection. So first of all, you provide the organization name. I provide the Pana Cloud. It is already taken. Maybe Sir Zeeshan or Adil has done it. Pana Cloud 3, and collection name is navbar. Okay, now I'm going to create the collection. Yes, you can see here the collection is created. Now we can export using this command, and we can import. Not showing here, I will show in the moment. So first of all, the bit, you need to install the bit CLI in your system, that to connect the bit dev from your local machine. So this is the command npm
Uh-huh.
install. Hello.
Okay. Yes, yes, go ahead.
Yes. Here is the command npm install bit dash bin dash dash global. If you want to globally install that package, so use this flag dash dash global. Npm install bit bin dash dash global. So I have already installed this command. I have already run this command earlier. So after executing this command, you just run bit. So you can test it is done or not. So you can see bit is giving me the all commands which it provides. So using this bit bin, you can connect your platform, bit dev platform. So now back to the article, create a free bit dev account. I have done it. Now create a component collection. This is all we have done. Here we have create the account and then collection. After this, I have already informed the CLI command. Now you can check the bit version. I have already showed you. This one is 14.8.8. Then yeah, you need to connect your account from your bit in your local machine. So here is the command bit login. Just run this command. I have already logged in. That is why it is not asking to me. So you don't confuse it. Just I log out and then run it this command again. logged out successfully. Then now run this command bit login. This is the link. I just click on this link. It will open on the browser and configure me login successfully. So now I have all the permissions here in my local CLI. Now what I need to do, let's back to the tutorial here. Just check the git config. You can just make sure the configuration is all okay or not using this bit config command. So just run this bit config command. Everything is perfect, no any error. Now definitely we need to create a workspace from bit init dash dash package manager yarn. From this command, we need to create a workspace. In this workspace, we will maintain all our components. So how it will work, I show you. Now you guys can see here is nothing right now related to bit. Here is. Now run this command bit init package manager yarn because we created from yarn successfully initialized a bit workspace. Same like that, you use a git init to maintain the project. So same here is we have a file dot bitmap and here is we have a version. Later we will maintain the components in this file. How I will show you. Also you guys can see here in the package.json the configuration. You guys can see of bit environment package manager, that is I have provided from the command. Okay, now the thing is why we are using bit. That is the most important thing. Share a react component. Once I create or build the component here, and how I can share it, how I can use in another project. So first of all I need to track the files. What I need to do, same using git, you have whenever you change the file, you need to add in .git file. So same thing like that, we need to add the component, but we don't have this component product.list product dash list. So I will provide here my component sudo bit add source, the path, this path source slash component slash what component I created. Yes, components slash navbar and enter it. Perfect. Added source components navbar index.js. I have now tracked the file in .bitmap file. Now I can check the status using bit status command sudo bit status. If it is providing me okay, so it means everything is working fine. You guys can see the navbar I added earlier using this command bit add. Here you guys can see navbar and status is okay. Now move forward. Install react compiler. This is very important thing in bit because we also, whenever we deploy the project, we need to build the project. We need to we have to build. Let's suppose if you want to deploy a project on a Firebase or a Surge. So first of all, you build it, you create a build. So same thing when we will deploy this component. First of all, we will build this component. So using when we use build from bit providing us a compiler. So from here, we need to import this component. That is the compiler. Compiler component, we need to import it. So first of all, I run this command bit import bit.envs compiler slash react. This is basically a react compiler. That is all providing by bit. Importing environment dependencies. Once it's done, then we need to build it. It takes some time, maybe a few seconds, 15 to 20 seconds. So basically, what I did, first of all, I did bit init. I just created a bitmap file using this bit init in this project. Then what components we need to export and we need to maintain on bitdev platform. So I just provide the component name here using bit add command. Then what I did, I just check the bit status, everything is okay. Then definitely I need to build that component. So as I explained, we need a compiler. So using this bit import command, I will get the component of compiler. So once it's done, then I will move forward. It should not take enough time. So internet is working. Sure. Yes, it's done. Perfect. Perfect. Now what I need, as I said, I need to build that component using bit build command. So just run the command sudo bit build. So which component I add using bit add command, that all I will build using this bit build command. So I added this navbar component. So here you guys can see this is all built. Now what I just need to tag it. As I explained, if I have a component with multiple versions, let's suppose I have a product list, and the product list is one is very simple, one is very animated, one is with bootstrap, one is with material UI. So the same component I can maintain using multiple versions. So I need to tagging it. So now this command I have done, bit build. Now I need to tag it. So using this command bit tag dash dash all, and this is the version. So what it means dash dash all. Let's suppose here I created multiple components. Here I created multiple, and right now I have just one component. If I build multiple components, so this command will work. This command will tag the all the components, but right now I have just one component. So what I can do, I can just provide here my component name, but this is also work dash dash all, but I just explain it what is the purpose of this dash dash all. And also we can give this, if we need to tag one component, we can provide the name here navbar. If we have more than one component, so you guys can give this dash dash all tag. But I don't right now I have one component, but this command is also work dash dash all for one component as well. So I just run it, bit tag dash dash all. Yes, this is all done. Building components navbar, components tagged, everything is done. Now just need to export it. So here I'm coming back. What I need, I just need the export. We can check the bit status as well, but right now here I just need bit export command here. This username took me a lot of time. Here you don't need to provide your username. Here what you will provide, here you will provide the organization name. So here I created a organization with the name of Panacloud 3. So I will provide the name for Panacloud 3 here. And another thing is collection name. This is our first, I will provide organization name, then I will provide collection name. So collection name is navbar. Here you guys can also see this organization name and navbar. It means you can copy the command from here as well. Now provide the name navbar. Okay, now just run this command. Sorry, I just need sudo run this command. Bit export panacloud3.navbar. Navbar panacloud3.navbar was denied. Why it is denied? Bit login sudo bit login. Okay. I got it. Because this one you guys can see. This is my another account, and I just created for you guys this one. So this is not connected. Now I back and run the command get bit login. I log out first, then login again. I will try bit login. Now it should ask which account I need. Yes, this one. What username I provided? Daniyal Nogori 123. I think so. Email address I can also provide. Daniyal Nogori @gmail.com and Daniel. Oh, that was my password. Login field the username or password. It should work. Daniel Nogori 123. Sorry, one Daniel Nogori. What is wrong, man? I will log out. Log in again. Daniel Nogori 123. Login field the username or password may be incorrect. What is it there? Forgot password. Another last option is forgot your password. What is this? You guys can also see how to recover your password. Uh, Password reset link sent. Where this sent? Yes, now team bit reset password. Change password. Yes. Once again, I type it. Yes. Right. Where is my collection? It will come up on Panaglot 3. I was not created the collection. I created it. Let's check. Oh, sorry, it's recently. Okay. I think I did not click on this create button, or I created, or I just no, I clicked it. Components. Oh yeah, man. Here is the collection. Okay, now here is we have navbar. Now what I need simple is let's connect the login. Now try to connect the CLI after changing the password. Login successful. Perfect. Now run export command. Now it should work. Exporting component. Perfect. Now you guys can see exported one components to scope panacloud 3 dot navbar. Now back to our collection and here click on this component. Now you guys can see the version which I tagged here above. Mm, yes, here is 0.0.1. Now I just click it and it will run here in our bit platform. Now just check it. Perfect. So what I exported, you guys can see here I have that navbar. So whenever I need the component we need to maintain, now the target is I created a component and export it on bitdev. Now another team member want to use this component or I personally want to use this component in another project. So how I can import it? That is the whole idea of bitdev. Now quickly, quickly I create amplifier bit react another project cd bit react cd bit uh, amplifier connection issue. Okay, it's created the directory. Now what I'm going to do, I'm simple creating another project and just import this component in another project. So simply sudo npx create a react app and the name is bit component. Once it's running, what I can do, you guys can see here what I exported. The component is here, the code is here. You guys can see the code, everything, the dependencies, and this bit platform is providing this very beautiful environment and the UI for the components, which we can see here. And we can also give this URL if this is a public one, so everyone can use it. The most important thing is now you guys can see here npm I at the red bit and panacloud 3 dot navbar dot navbar. This is also bit build a package of this component. So whenever you need to install any library, like let's suppose if you are using react and you want routing, so what you do, you install the library for routing like react router dom. And same thing if you want to request http request in react, so you need a library axios. So there is multiple packages on npm. Same bit is providing us a package with our component. So you just copy this and you can give any to any team member. They can install it. So same thing we are going to do in our another project. It's done. Now I will. I'm in this project. Simple. What I need here. Back to that tutorial. This is all done. Bit from bitlist, you guys can see the exported components, because right now this yes, this one bitlist component id. Here is we have the component id and local version what I have already done in with the component. So in this one terminal we have another project, and here is we have exported component in this one. So now I'm going to use in this project, in this one. Just simple, we need to import it, nothing else. Install component in another project, create a new React application. I have already done it. Then simple, you guys can use yarn add, and also you guys can use npm install. So now I have here npm install bit panagraph 3, this one. Just I need to, I'm going to close it. Just I'm going to run this command here. npm I, better if I use yarn add. Simple yarn add at the red bit panacloud3 dot navbar. Once it's done, I will show you how it will work in this component, in this project. What I install it, definitely you know the dependencies all coming in here package.json. So this dependency, as I give you the example of React router and Axios and multiple libraries we have, all the dependencies you guys can see in package.json. So right now, what I did, I export my component from one project and bit publish that component as a package, and using npm I can install it. So I simple run this command npm I install, or you guys can add yarn add and simple that package name. Now back to the source code, and simply as you import the libraries, simple like that, you will import your component. Not coming, leave it. Import from where we need to import, from here. So just copy this key package name, whatever the name you want, because I exported by default. Import navbar from this. Just remove this all, and just paste it here. Now let's run this project. Sudo yarn start. Just run this. Now let's see this component what I built from another project. It should be render here. So the pretty thing is, I don't need to import the project. I don't need to clone the project for one component. How I can use the component using bit platform? We just need to we just have a CLI of bit. Just install the CLI and track the component, which component we want to export. Just track it and export it on your account. There is two options. If you want to make it public, you can public it. If you want to make it private, you can make it private. So now it's running the project. Just going here. Now you guys can see here. So That is the whole idea of BitDev. Another thing, what I can show you, how you guys can check out on multiple versions. Now I'm back again. Now I'm closing this project. So how you guys can import in multiple projects your component. So this is all done. Now I'm going and updating the component from first one. Here is my bit component cd cd yes, bit react. Now just run this code. Okay, now I am going to create another component here. Once I created a napper, another one is a header. Just create a file, index.js, simple, import it.
Daniel, you made a spelling mistake in index.
Oh sir, thank you so much. Yes, index.js. Okay, now just create a function component. Oof. Okay, this is all. Return it, div and hello from header. Just export this component. Header. Okay, now I'm not going to import it here. I just the concept is to export this all components. Same thing again. What first I need to track this component. Which component you want to track or export it on BitTab, or you want to use in another project, or you want to use this component with your team members. So you just need to export it. So first of all, same command. What is happened? Yes, clear. Okay, clear. Now just need to run again bit add command, which I have run earlier. Here is the, yes, this one. Just track the component which you want. So I want to give the header component. Just add it. Once it's added, now you have to run the uh, tags. And also first of all, you just build it, then you tag it and deploy it. So now just run the build command. This component I want to build to publish on BitDev. This is done. This is a header and this one is earlier one. So this is, now I want to tag it. Earlier one I tag 0.0.1. Now I'm going to tag it using give me a second, bit tag, and here we can provide the name, and here we can give the name when we add it. So header we add in bitmap or in bitdev. So I just run give the name here and enter it. Okay, now same bit export, and here I can see the command which is provided. First of all, organization name, then collection name where you want to export it. So I just panacloud.nav bar, panacloud 3, it's panacloud 3 and .nav bar. Just exporting the component. Okay, exported. Now I just go back and refresh it. Here is Yes, this one, just refresh it. Now you guys can see here is first component is navbar and second one is header with this version. So now what I can do, I just click it here and can see my component here. Also here I have the 0.0.2 version. If I want to edit or update this component, so same thing again, I can do hello from header. What tags you can enter? Daniel. Hello from Daniel. And just again, you add it, tag it with your version 0.0.3 and export it. Once it's done, you guys can see here the version as well of this component. So BitDev maintain the tag, the versioning for all the components. Now we have 0.0.3, last one is 0.0.3, and it should run with Daniel. Hello from Daniel. Now you guys can see. Now I want to go back. So everything BitDev is maintaining for us. Hello from Daniel. Okay, it is back to the version, but not updating this. If I want to, if yes, sir, if you have time, so I can also show the checkout how we can check out in this component on previous one. Because I know Sir Zeeshan and Adil Bhai have also the content to cover the storybook with bit and other things.
I think, Daniel, we had other technical issues as well. So
Yes, sir.
therefore, let's move to Zeeshan. And
Perfect.
Zeeshan,
Just give me a second. Just give me, very sorry. Just give me a second.
go ahead.
Just give me a second. I can also show you here from checkout command. Yes, checkout. You guys can also, if you want to check out the component, let's suppose you have one component, two component, three component, you have maintained the versions. So you guys can use this command bit checkout version name and then the component name which I added, which I provide on the edit time. So simple with the version name with the checkout command, you guys can check out on the components. So this is all bit dev idea. Thank you so much.
Daniel, I just have a question. What's the difference between checkout and basically installing the component?
No, sir. From checkout, we are moving back. Let's suppose, I have this project. Now I'm going to share this component with my one of my colleague. So what they will do? They will just import it. They will just import it, and it will the component with the latest one. If I if I provide the version as well, so they can also check out on another version. Same like in GitHub branches. Same like in GitHub branches.
Okay, got it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much, Daniel. You did a wonderful job. At least we now have the main concepts of bit and everybody can practice at home. Zeeshan, why don't you, before we move to Adil, why don't you just give an overview of how would you in Panacloud set up the workflow by combining storybook and bit, and how would you use it?
Basically, what we need to understand it first, we need to connect the dots that what we have started in our last class was component driven development. So idea is to create separate components, small components, and then use those components within your project multiple times or across your multiple projects, so that you can easily use built-in component which you have invested time previously in implementing. Let's say we have a sign up and sign in. Almost every project requires sign up, sign in. What we can do is we can create a component which will have sign up and sign in features, and we can use it. So what we covered in last class was related to the storyboard. What storyboard book does is it gives you the flexibility so that inside your project you create a component and you can view multiple version of it. The problem is that works on your system. So you have created multiple components that can run independently, and you view them on storybook. You can also publish them, but the problem is those are separate components which resides on my system, and even inside my project. So I have created a project which is a much larger project, and that project has multiple components. Now what we need to do is we need those components to be accessible in other projects and anywhere else. So for that, what we give me just a minute.
So what we were basically discussing was, Zeeshan was basically, I think he's receiving a call. Yes, go ahead, Zeeshan.
I was just disconnecting it. Phone was this far, so that's why. Sorry about that. Okay, so the problem is, so what we have done in last class was related to the storybook components, and those components resides inside my project. Now what I need to do is other can use my project, or I want to use those components in another project. So to use in another project, I'll be staying at the same position that I need to copy paste those components into another project. So what bitdev does is bit.dev uh, take it to the next level. What it does is it's actually, if you try to understand, it's a Git but for a component. Git is for repositories, for a complete project. Bit is for a component. So you can exactly do like a checkout, and you push your component on your Bit server, you add files, all those things we have done with the Git. With this few changes you do with the Bit. So what you do is you created your components. Now what you can do is you can push those components or publish those components separately on a platform at a particular server, which is we have bit.dev. So we can individually publish those component on a bit.dev. So what it will do is it will allow us to publish those component and any other user, or we can also use that component directly inside our project. We have uh, I guess in our whole course, we have imported too many or installed too many of libraries. We have used charts, even we have used React, or we have used GraphQL. So all the time, what we need to do is we need to install a library. That's a complete project and a library. Exactly similar option that with bit.dev, what we can do is we can install a component in our system. So we'll develop a component, we will develop a component library, and then we'll publish that component library on bit.dev, just like Daniyal did it, that he created a collection on the bit.dev, and you publish your component separately on bit.dev. It will have an URL. Each component will have a separate URL. So what you can do is you can pass that URL to anyone else to review. Good thing is bit.dev gives you a UI so that you can on directly on bit.dev side you can view your component. So that's how it's connecting it with storybook connecting with the bitdev. Now what we can do in an organization is, let's say I am creating a component library in Panacloud. So we need to develop a component library, and I need to develop a project where multiple team members are working on it. So what I can do is I will create a repository. That repository will be on GitHub or Git. It will be a Git repository. In that repository, I'll create multiple components, and to view that component, I will use Storybook. So that what you need to understand is whenever you create a component, you need a page or you need a something where you can view this. So you need to create application, and you need to have page on particular application. We don't need it because we are not creating application, we are creating component. So we need a UI visualization for that particular component. It also helps user or a component developer that forget about everything else, just focused on your component. So what I'll do is, in a organization, we'll create a component library which will resides on GitHub. It will have storybook, and it will have all my components. So what I'll do is I'll push my changes or my components in GitHub, so that another developer can clone that repository and implement component as well. Because I'm creating a library and there are 10, 20 or 30 developers working on a component. So I need 20, 30 or 40 components. I'll have a multiple developers creating a component. So everybody will be developing a component, and we will be pushing our code into GitHub. Now, that's one point, that we have created a repository and we have pushed the code. That's, we are pushing the code. We cannot use that component individually. If I want to use them, I will have to copy those component into my project. What I can do as a next step is, inside, as Daniyal has created a project, created a component, so it will be exactly similar, because we will have in with the storybook, we also have a component folder. So what we'll do is, in the component folder, we'll publish those components on bit.dev. So there will be a repository which have multiple components. It will resides on GitHub. All my developers will be pushing code in a, definitely they'll be creating a separate branches, and I'll be reviewing code, and once finalized, it will be on master branch, or all the component will be on master branch. Then what I will do is, I'll, using bit.dev, I'll push all those components on bit.dev site. Now let's say I have created a 10 components. Those 10 components will be published on a bit.dev as a 10 separate component, and I can use those components in my project, or in my, let's say I have created a sign-in component. Now I have a 20, 30 or 40 projects. So those 10, 20 projects can access that component directly, just installing yarn, add, and a component name. So that component will be used in your project. So that's how you use Storybook and bit.dev together to utilize them and create a component library, flexible, so that you can publish them, and you can even view those components without you implementing them in a particular project, so that you don't need to worry about the whole UI, just focus on your component. That's how we'll be implementing.
Zeeshan, thank you so much. Very nice of you. And I understand how to do component-based developments. Adil, uh, the mic is in your hands.
Hi. Okay, so
We have about
the other
15,
topic that's left
we
for
have,
today
we
is
have 15, 16 minutes left.
okay. So let's talk about design systems quickly. In short, a design system is there which contains these UI components that we're talking about. So all of this component-driven development leads to having these components, and these are supposed to be reusable, because what we want is to develop a component once and then be able to reuse it across different projects, across different teams throughout the organization. So that's what the design system is there for. It will contain these components. Basically, it's like a tool chain and a whole standardized system in which it makes it easier for developers and designers to collaborate together to contribute towards building these components, and then to be able to distribute the components throughout the organization. So in looking at this, there's three main technical parts in terms of the developer perspective. So one, you have these components, the actual components. Then you have a design token, which is basically the styling specific variables. So that would be like if you have each organization has its own branding theme, for example. So you would have your colors, your fonts, maybe different spacing, different layout standards. So that would be more specific to the organization. And you would have a documentation site, which would include how to use the components, what the components can do, what they cannot do. So think of it like how to use the components documentation. And there's a link provided in the uh, Bootcamp 2020 Git repo, which includes a link to this article that uh, I'm going over right now. And I'll share my screen in a second, and we can go through some of those things in more detail. But at a high level, it lists up some. Actually, why don't I just share my screen here? So if you come down in this article, this one, so it talks about a few different tools that are used to build this design system out. So one, we've talked about Storybook in detail already, which is where we are developing the components in isolation. So this is our isolated component development environment. And it also mentions something about auto-generated documentation. So this is one of our tools. Then React is the JavaScript framework that's being used to actually build the component. And then we have, this is an additional thing that they've listed here, the styled components. And we've worked with it earlier in the bootcamp as well. And then they're using something called Prettier, which is just a kind of simple tool for auto formatting code. So just handling like the indentation, the spaces, just to make sure that all the code, no matter who written it, it's all formatted in a standardized way across the entire organization. So that makes it easier for you to read other people's code as well, because manual code formatting is different from developer to developer. I would maybe format it differently. Zeeshan would do it differently. Daniyal would do it differently. So everyone has their own preferences. So Prettier gets rid of all of that and just makes it a standardized format. And then for maintenance, we've already been working with GitHub Actions throughout the bootcamp already, and that's what's used here for the continuous integration. So every time you build a component, from a developer perspective, since this is all done in Agile, it's important to get feedback from different stakeholders. So you're able to continuously integrate the component as you're developing it into a live server kind of thing. So it's similar to how we are using Surge to host some of our projects. We have some tools here that can be used to display the components to the stakeholders to get feedback. And then we have ESLint for JavaScript linting to catch for bugs in the code. And then you also have something here called Chromatic, which is a visual testing tool, and it's free to use. It's built by the Storybook maintainers as well. And what it does is it will compare UI components from like before and after a change, and it will detect if the UI has a visual change. So it will have like a before snapshot of the actual image of the component, and then after snapshot of the component, and it will analyze if there's any difference, and if there is, it will flag it when you're testing the component. And then we've used Jest previously when we were doing test-driven development, so that's being used here again. So instead of having to retest all the regression for the entire application every time, we can use these testing tools to automate the testing. And then for the distribution, we're using NPM here. So Daniyal has shown previously with bit.dev how to use NPM for the distribution of the components and the library. And then Auto is a automatic release management workflow, which will automatically update your GitHub, and it'll update the version numbers and all the links that will make it easier for somebody to follow. And then with the Storybook usage, there's a few different add-ons So one is for accessibility. It's called accessibility, and it looks for people who have disabilities. It will flag UI issues that would be there for somebody who has maybe a visual disability. Maybe it'll flag something like the fonts are too small for somebody who needs to see fonts larger or something. And then you have a Storybook add-on called Actions. This is different from GitHub Actions. This is Storybook Actions, and what this does is you're able to use it to have interactivity with the component when you're working with a component in an isolated environment within Storybook. So you can click on the individual components, maybe a button, and then see what happens. And then there's another add-on called Controls, and this one, what it does is um, for each component, maybe you'll have like a drop-down menu, for example, or a checkbox, and each click or each option you select is supposed to behave differently in terms of what the UI does. So Controls gives you the ability to adjust properties to basically to test out how components are behaving. And then the docs add-on is there to automatically document what's going on in your storybook stories. So these are some of the tools that are there to come up with this entire design system. And if you look at the overall process, it's a couple of different steps. So you go from build, so you build the actual component. So we can just skip through here. And then, so what's going on is you're using Storybook Actions, source knobs, and with basically Storybook. Zeeshan went over this in detail in the previous class. And then our framework for development is with React, ESLint, and Prettier for the code formatting. So this is what we're using to build the actual component. And then once it's built, we're building the component inside of Storybook again with the isolated development environment, which was demonstrated in the previous class. So this is kind of what Storybook looks like. Here they're just going over some uh, development, how to build a component inside Storybook. We've already done this, so we can glance over this. And then basically, once you've built the component, the next step is, because we're working in a team, the idea is to share your work as you're working on it with the rest of your team and all the different stakeholders in your whoever is impacted by the product you're working on, and get their feedback. Um, and the other thing here that's mentioned is the design system is a single point of failure. It could be because, for example, if you have a single design system where you're developing these components, and a single component within this design system is shared across different teams on different products, and you have a bug in one of those components that's used across the organization, it would impact all the different products. But again, if you fix the issue, it's no longer a single point of failure, it's a single point of success. So it reduces work, but at the same time, it adds risk in the event that you have some issue in the component itself. So that's why reviewing and testing is so important, because it is a single point of failure. And to help with the testing, one of the important things is the visual review from your team. So you need to establish a universal reference point. And what that is basically meaning is here, once you've built your component, you deploy it to a live Storybook server kind of, and that's where you can share the link to the rest of your team and all the stakeholders. They can open up the component on your live Storybook, and then they can then use some sort of ticketing system such as Jira or maybe within GitHub itself, and they can give you some feedback on whether or not they accept the UI, or maybe they want some changes, and then it come back to you. Once the changes are accepted, you can push it through to Git, and that's where you have the GitHub Actions set up. So yeah, GitHub, I'm sorry. This one, where we're mentioning GitHub Actions, this is the automated methodology. So for sharing your work with the rest of the team, you can use GitHub Actions. So as you're coding the component, you can use GitHub Actions to deploy the code to a shared storybook environment, where then your team can review and give you the feedback. Um, and then you can use a tool like either GitHub or Jira to get feedback from your team, and then make the necessary changes, and then publish the changes from there. So a process kind of like this, where you build your component, you commit it to GitHub, and it's pushed to a online storybook where the team can review it visually. So instead of looking at the actual code, they're looking at what the UI component looks like, whether you've met the UI requirement or not. And then either they accept the change, and then you can merge it into your master branch, or they can request some changes, at which point you go back to build, you make the requested changes, and then you continue to committing, having another visual review, and then assuming you don't have more changes, you can merge the code. um, Next thing, so once it's been reviewed and you're able to merge the code, and you need to test to make sure that there aren't any issues that have mistakenly made it through. So in terms of testing, there's a lot of different states because we're talking about UI. So this is a good diagram here, which shows you have one component which could have an initial state, but then you can have multiple states of that component, and then you have four different UI states for that one component initially. But then if you take into account the different browsers, so if you look at just these four major browsers, then you have for each state, then you have four more states. So for four states, you have 16 new states. And then you'll have different viewports. So you have all these different devices out there in the market now. So you can have an exponential number of states that just continues to grow. And then if you take into account the different user disabilities, that continues to make UI states a pretty scary situation. And there is a stat here somewhere which said um, that there's 15% of users have a visual disability, which is a very high number if you think about it. 15% of users could be a lot, could be millions of users, right? If you have a big user base. Okay, and then in terms of testing, one is the visual test appearance. So you can have visual tests where as I mentioned before, you have an image of the component before the change was made, an image of the component after the change. And what this visual test will do is compare the two and see if there's any change in what the UI looks like. And if there's a change, it will alert the tester. And this is called chromatic. Okay. Then you have unit testing, and then within the React, when we do a create React app project, it already has a unit testing functionality built in there, which we've used previously. So that's what it's being discussed here. And then once you've written your unit test, it can be added to the workflow with GitHub Actions. So it will only be deployed once the tests are passed. Okay, and then this is talking about the accessibility test, as I mentioned, for the disabilities. So for example, here, this is maybe for somebody who's visually impaired, maybe colorblind or some sight issues. They would have a hard time reading these. Maybe some of our viewers might have a hard time reading this. So a tool, this accessibility add-on from Storybook would be able to flag issues like this, which would make for a more improved user experience. And then you have some more additional testing strategies here. So we have snapshot test with Jest, which looks at the actual markup code And it says here, which makes a little bit of sense as well, that maybe your markup, if you look at the code itself, it might be fine, but in terms of the visuals, it might not pass from a user experience perspective. So this could be a good additional thing to do, but it's not like the end all of testing. And then moving on to end-to-end testing with Selenium or Cypress, these are more complex testing. So it has an end-to-end complete user flow testing. So it's able to have like a complete how your data flows, how the components are handling it. It's a much more comprehensive and complex testing. So this is done for more maybe more serious projects, and then these are very time consuming as well to create. Okay, so the next thing is documentation. So once you've built something, it's not enough to just hand over the code to somebody. You need to have some sort of a user manual, so a user who's trying to use your design system can actually adopt the components. And for this, documentation is very important. So what Storybook does is it gives a documentation add-on which will analyze the story and then do a lot of the work on its own to create documentation that can be used. Let's see here. So in terms of documentation, what you need for an automated documentation, one, it needs to be up to date. So whenever you change some code, the documentation needs to be updated. If there is some markdown language that can be used, that would be important. Later we'll see that this uses MDX as well. Maintenance time, reduce the maintenance time of writing documentation, so the team can actually focus more on the code and the actual update instead of all the tedious tasks with documentation. Um, Having a boilerplate so that developers don't have to rewrite same things over and over again. So with automation, that is a lot of this is handled. And then customizing documentation where there is more complex use cases. And that ties up with having a markdown tooling to write these documentations. So you're able to customize the documentation if you need to. So yeah, so with Storybook, you write the story and the documents are generated. So within the Storybook, you'll have a Canvas tab where the component, where you have the component development, the isolated environment, and then you have a Docs tab, which is where the documentation is going to be generated for the component you're developing. And then, yes, here you can see you're able to extend the documentation. So whatever documentation is generated by the system, by Storybook Doc add-on, you can add to it using some more comments here. So you can update the stories to provide more context for each component. And this would be used within the docs. So you can see here that the stories is here updated. You'll have some parameters, and then inside of the JavaScript file, you'll have a comment here, which is then used inside of the documentation. So you can have like a human input for a component, which is then used by the Storybook Docs add-on to create the document. Right. So that's that. Okay, and then you can use, so the documentation is the language used here is Markdown or MDX, which is something you can use to customize the documentation even further. So you can write your own Markdown, and it would create the page like this. Right. So, and the Markdown is pretty simple. It's just like XML tags here. And then if you keep going, you can create custom pages with MDX, which gives you more control over the documentation. And then you can create a cover page for your design system as well. So you'll have a whole like this introduction page, and then it kind of, you can create links from here and just have a complete documented system. So that's the documentation aspect of it, and then you can publish the documentation online. So similar to how we're using um, GitHub Actions uh, to to publish the component online for feedback from users, from our stakeholders. We can also publish the documentation similarly, and for this we can use some static deployment tool like Netlify or Vercel. There's a few more options. Maybe you can use Firebase, but these are some options you can use for static pages. And then once the documentation is deployed online, your users are able to access it and then figure out how to use your design system and the components within it. And lastly, here you have the distribution, which for one example, Daniel just demonstrated earlier with Bit. So what's basically needed to be done here is to package the components and then import them, import your design system into other applications. So the objective again was to have all of the components that are reusable across different projects. So you have the design system, and the objective now is to have those components within it be able to be reused across different applications in your organization. So we need to package the design system, um, which was demonstrated earlier with Bit, for example, and it was deployed into the Bit cloud. So that's one way to package everything. And then once you've deployed it online, you can add your you can add the package to any project. And then here it's talking about release management with Auto. Uh, this is another tool that's used um, uh, to manage your releases with npm, and it gives you change logs describing what changed, gives you version numbers, creates the git tags and version numbers on git inside of your repository. So it automates a lot of those tedious tasks, and so you can install Auto, which will take care of all the issues with npm release publishing. And then to make this all work, you need an npm token, so that can be generated. You can create an npm token and then use this to automate the deployment using GitHub Actions. So there's going to be a workflow here somewhere. Yeah, so here you'll have the token you create. So similarly to how we use token with Surge, we can have a token for npm, and that would be used within our workflow to publish changes in our repository to npm, like this. And then you'll have your key like this, for example, and then your token here. So like this. And what this will do is automatically release your code to npm. And then once it's there, you can import the design system into any application. All you have to do is running, where is it? Here, they're using Yarn to add the package. You could use npm install or Yarn. And this will import the design system into the app. And then once the design system is imported, the package, npm package is imported, you can then have access inside of your React app just by doing an import from the package name, like we've been doing throughout the bootcamp. Yeah, so that's how you can distribute your design system, publishing it to npm and then being able to access it into projects. And then lastly, here is a complete workflow from build to distribution. So you build just a review here. So you build the component in isolation, and we're using ESLint and Prettier for the formatting and the just checking for the basic bugs, and then you create the different UI states as stories inside of Storybook, and then once you've built it, you're ready for review. Or what's better is to have a constant review, even if you are still working on it, to continuously push your work to a like a demo Storybook server, so from where your team can look at your work and review it and give you like real-time feedback, and help resolve a lot of the communication gaps. And then once it's been reviewed and passed by your team, then you run a visual test for bugs in the UI in terms of appearance. You can run unit tests for functional bugs, and then once your testing is done, if you can either you can look at what's changed, and if you see that something has changed and it was intended, you accept the change, and if it was not intended, then you have to go back and fix it. And then once your code passes the test, the documentation would be updated with the auto generation. You can customize the docs that have been auto generated with the markdown, and then once that documentation is done, you share it with the stakeholders with your static site that's also maintained with GitHub Actions. And then lastly, once the documentation is completed, the code has been tested, now you're ready to package the code and version it, and then once it's there, any app could then install it with npm. So that's the workflow of how to have a design system and be able to use it across different projects. Zasab, I think you're on mute.
I'm saying you did a marvelous job. In about 25 minutes, you explained a very difficult and very long, which usually takes 2-3 hours. So you did it in 5 minutes, and it was full of energy. Thank you so very much. In the next class, all the students, please get ready. We will start building modern applications, modern global applications, and we will start with Jamstack serverless, and we will go after that. I've already created a repository for it. We made small steps, and we will, in the next class, we will start discussing what is a modern app, what is Jamstack, what is serverless, what is Gatsby, what's server-side rendering, what is client-side rendering, what is client server-side generation, and so on. A lot of topics. What is headless CMS? What is headless e-commerce? And we'll start building modern global apps, which is going to make millions of dollars for you and your customers. Thank you so much. Bye-bye, everyone.
Thank you. See you guys. Bye.